it is, or Siwoff, I'm not sure how she pronounces that. She says that the safest place to go in the event of an atomic blast would be the Guggenheim Museum. The building is encased in its own concrete shell, which is suspended into the bedrock. It is the only building of its kind in this city, and I believe in this hemisphere. It is the only building in this city that could absorb such an intense blast. Honest, I'm not hoping to be proven correct, but this is an important trivia fact.
It certainly is. We may need to use that.
I hope people aren't going to be rushing down to the Guggenheim Museum.
I hope we won't have to. This is great. You're going to love this. Where is the deserted subway station where the word Shazam changed crippled newsboys into Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr.? Huh?
I don't know.
He says, I assume that the reader read comic books as a child, of course. But the answer, on Broadway, between the 86th Street and 96th Street stations of the 7th Avenue local, and there's more to this answer. Yes, he says, at about 91st Street, there is a dimly lit, no longer used subway station. There's no way to reach this station except by hopping off a slow-moving number 1 local, since the street entrances and stairways down no longer exist. And this is Barry Frank of Manhattan who sent this in. Barry says, every time I pass this station, I resist the temptation to jump off and shout, Shazam! Who knows? Maybe, just maybe, that bolt of lightning will crash down, strike me, and turn me into...
I wonder.
Right. That's Barry Frank. How about that? Bet you didn't know about that.
I wonder how Barry found out about it. Well, I have another last name that I can't pronounce, but it's Linda Horizny, something like that. And she found out somehow that in 1906, horse-drawn traffic in New York City moved at an average speed of 11.5 miles an hour. And today, surveys show that automobile traffic in New York averages only 8 miles per hour. So in 60 years, we have regressed.
I can believe that. Listen, how about this? The total weight of all the buildings, subways, pipes, mains, sewers, streets, pavement, conduits, and other structures built in Manhattan actually is less than the total weight of the earth excavated in their construction. So that Manhattan weighs less now than it did before all these things were built.
That really is hard to believe. But it answers people who think that we're going to be sinking into the ground here under the weight of all these buildings.
Yeah, that's deep.
Sinking into the water is what I meant to say. During the construction of Rockefeller Center, a practice was instituted which New Yorkers now take for granted. It is said that Rockefeller himself stopped by to watch progress one day and was energetically asked to move on. That was the origin of the peephole, now standard equipment on every construction site. That was Cliff Rodriguez sent that in.
Here's one more from Isabella Banton of Woodbridge, New Jersey. During the blackout of July 13th through 14th in 77, when electric power to New York City failed during the early evening and was not restored until the next afternoon, what do you think those people were doing while the lights were out, huh?
I have no idea.
Well, Isabella says that they were talking on the telephone because a record 80 million telephone calls were made, and on an average business day, only 36 million calls are made in the city.
Lots of talking on the phone. I had heard other things about that, but we won't go into it.
Right.
For all you non-trivia fans, in case you're falling asleep here, we have only one more, and then we'll be probably back to some music. But around the turn of the century, so many streetcars rumbled across Brooklyn that the natives became known as trolley dodgers. The Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers was the name given to the baseball team that eventually became simply the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Of course, we have to verify all this, you know. How did the one-on-one collaboration come about with Earl Klugh?
Well, I met Earl first when we were on the road. Earl's group and mine were sharing the bill on some concerts, and I would stand there in awe of his guitar playing while he would do his set, and we got to know each other, and he turned out to be just a super guy, and in addition to being a great musician. And Bruce Lundvall became very excited when I asked Earl to be a featured soloist on my Touchdown album, and that collaboration sort of started there, and Bruce suggested that it would be a great idea if the two of us did an album together, and we approached Earl's record company, and fortunately they were also excited by the idea, and they worked all of the business details out, and we were able to do it. It was just a great project for me from beginning to end. Earl is easiest possible musician to get along with, and it's a pure delight in the studio, and I just couldn't say enough good things about him.
You wrote that one, didn't you?
Yes. Earl and I split the writing. There are 6 tunes, and he wrote 3 and I wrote 3.
Okay, sounds good. You are one jazz artist who has been able to cross over into a lot of different markets and achieve a certain level of recognition, along with which goes large attendance at concerts,
We hope.
big album sales, and all this sort of thing. I'm interested to know if at this point, considering the fact that you have reached out into so many areas, do you consider your music to be jazz, and just where do you find the music that you're doing now fitting in the jazz world right now?
Pat, I think we've gone through an incredible period of time, maybe the last 5 or 6 years, that all of us are still, that all of us, I say all of us who were and still are involved in jazz music, are still trying to understand the implications of what has happened. We're suddenly reaching an audience that is completely different that we never had before, and the music itself is changing so fast that a lot of people are having trouble even deciding whether it is jazz or not. Myself, I don't really worry too much about that because I know where my roots are. I know that I've always loved jazz. I studied it, I played it. That was the music that I heard the most throughout my educational process and when I was growing up and everything. And now I just, I think of myself as being a musician, and I play and try to evolve with the other music that I hear and the influences that I have. And one of the things that I love about today's breed of jazz musicians is that they are much more widely versed in other areas of music. A lot of them are classically trained now. A lot of them have had experience playing in rock groups, folk groups, other kinds of music. And it shows in the music itself. The music is now a combination of a lot of elements, and it's probably impossible to label it as such. I think we may have to wait another 5 or 10 years and look back on it, and then we'll be able to say exactly what the music was. And the important thing is, though, that people are listening and that it is an alternative to the straight-ahead rock music that is going on. And in my view, the whole area of music that we're in is certainly the jazz of the late 70s and possibly the jazz of the 80s. And it's no more different from the music that preceded it than bebop was different from the swing era, and the swing era was different from the Dixieland era. We've had lots of changes in jazz over the last 50 years or so.
What do you think the music that's happening now is going to do to traditional jazz, if anything? What kind of effect do you think that crossover jazz music is going to have on mainstream?
Well, I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, it's having a good effect on all areas of jazz. I think we're seeing the fact that we are bringing new people in who've never listened to any jazz before. They are now curious, and if it's only one piece of music that they turn on to, that's going to lead them to want to turn on to other pieces of music. And so that anything that falls within the heading of jazz, they're going to be curious about. And there will, as always, there will be things that they respond to and things that they don't. But I think just the fact that jazz is no longer a bad word like it once was. I remember when I first really started making inroads into the business, record companies were still afraid of calling a record a jazz record because they were afraid that immediately that would put the hex on it, and it would get relegated to the back area of the record stores where no one would see it. And that's really not true anymore. The records are being, jazz records are being treated just like any other pop records are, and I think it's fantastic, and I believe that applies to a certain degree to all areas.
It's also true that along with commercial acceptance, with breaking into new markets and this sort of thing, there comes a certain pressure to maintain certain standards. Do you find, as an artist, do you feel at all stifled by the success that you have had? Do you sort of feel like you've been pushed into doing a certain type of thing, or do you still find a real release in your music?
The hardest thing for me to deal with is the time pressure. I do feel that a lot because there is the opportunity now for me to do lots of things that I find challenging and interesting, and I have never been very good at saying no, and I still find it hard to say no, particularly when I'm asked to do something that I really would love to do. So I try to fit an awful lot in, and it's getting to the point now where it's very difficult to keep up. That pressure is there. As far as the other pressure, I think it's quite the opposite. It's easier now to do what I want to do because I have the means to be able to do it, and I'm able to work with the best musicians in the country, and that's always just tremendously exciting. And it's a real good period of time in that respect, if the scheduling can permit the relaxation enough to enjoy the projects that I'm in.
You wear a lot of hats too, by the way. You write, arrange, produce, you're a performer. Which do you get the most enjoyment out of? Do you like to produce yourself, or do you like to produce other people? Or?
I think I found not too long ago that I'm one of these kind of people that can never do the same thing for too long a period of time. I seem to get restless and want to try something else out. And I thought for a while that it was a problem for me, and that maybe I should make up my mind and just decide to do one thing. But then the more I thought about it, it seemed to me that maybe if I had a special thing to offer, it was that I could do a lot of different kinds of things, and that I should accept the responsibility to do that and try it. And it's been good for me. I know working as a producer and getting involved in somebody else's work completely away from my own playing or my own arranging is a very stimulating process for me. I enjoy the process of trying to help them out and trying to make their music come off, and it makes me go back to do my own thing with a different attitude.
Do you have any projects of special interest that you're working on now?
Yes, I have several. I'm right in the middle of doing a new album for Richard T., the pianist on my label, and we've gone in and done the rhythm tracks last week, and very exciting. And Richard is doing a lot more singing now. He's got a featured role in the new Paul Simon movie that's a combination acting role and singing role. And it's brought out a whole new aspect of Richard's personality that's just fantastically exciting. And I'm really enjoying watching this new phase of Richard's career start to take off. So I had a lot of fun with that, and we're still working on it. I'm also about 3/4 of the way through a new album project of my own, which hopefully will be out sometime in January or February, my 8th.
What are you going to call it?
Well, it's got to have something to do with 8. I think maybe I'm going to I might go obscure again.
Yeah, you're getting tricky.
A lot of people, it's amazing to me. We thought some of the things that when I did the 5th and 6th, we thought it was fairly obvious. And I talked to a lot of people, even close friends of mine, who had no idea until I pointed out to them that there was that big 5-cent piece on the cover, and that meant 5, and that the touchdown was 6 points, and so it's almost become our own version of a trivia game. Maybe that could be the winner of next year's trivia contest.
I wonder what's going to happen when you run out of names to go with the numbers. Well, we're going to be looking for you at the Bottom Line and at Town Hall.
I sure hope so.
And at Carnegie Hall.
I'm looking forward to doing it. It's going to be a lot of complicated rehearsing and getting all the different musicians together, but it's one of the more challenging projects that I've attempted in a long time, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I don't think it's going to be any more difficult than judging those trivia contest entries, which we're going to have to do
Yes, true.
right now. But we will take some phone calls from you at 335-6